¿Quién iba a imaginar que el camino que un día iniciaste finalizaría abruptamente? ¿Quién iba a pensar que la salida a tu encrucijada sería cruzar el puente que jamás pensaste que podrías cruzar? La transformación solo ocurre en lugares incómodos, así que con valentía sigue caminando un pie enfrente del otro. Acuérdate que si no creces, te encoges. Yo soy Marta Ro, bienvenido de vuelta a la incomodidad. Échale. Muy bienvenidos sean al poder de lo incómodo. Este es probablemente lo único que voy a decir en español. Hoy tengo una invitada muy especial y no solamente vamos a hacer 3 episodios para ti, sino que para mí es un momento importante porque saben que cumplo 40 años este año y esta mujer me ha acompañado por 10 de esos 40 años. Krista Petty.
Hi.
Did you understand what I said?
Kind of. Not really.
I'm saying that it's a pleasure, obviously, that you're here and that I'm very excited. I'm 40 this year and you've been with me for the past 10, at least 12. 40. I'm truly, truly excited, not just for all these episodes that we're going to embark on today, but just the fact that you get to share who you are with the world.
Mm.
I've been very lucky to have you as my mentor, and I wanted to share a little of you with everyone, and in a immortal way, which is my podcast, because that will always be there.
I love it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
So this season is the journey season. I always try to give it a theme, and the purpose of this 5th season is for everyone who comes on the podcast to give us a little piece of their journey or what they think is like the most relevant jewels, ideas of what being Krista Petty has been like in your evolution, where you hold what's important, and where you hold what you want to contribute.
Nothing major.
Nothing major, just
a little of that. All the most important things about my life.
A 45-minute episode.
In 45 minutes or less. Which will be edited down to 10.
Exactly. There'll be reels, 30-second reels.
There will be.
So you need to give us good nuggets.
No pressure.
No pressure. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, I met you maybe 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And you've been mentoring me maybe for 10.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of your background and especially the pieces that have obviously inspired my own coaching and my own journey. But this episode, truly, I want you to share who you are as a human being, not just a coach, because at the end of the day, there is a human being behind the coach.
For sure.
So where would you begin?
It's funny because as we were talking about this, I'm just going to go with what first came to mind.
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to have a conversation.
Do it.
When I was like 10, I would walk home from school and I would run my fingers along the chain link fence. And as I ran my fingers along the chain link fence, I would have this experience like I was connected to everything. Like I wasn't
Krista.
Just Krista, although I was in my little, clothes and on the sidewalk and the school in my neighborhood, and I knew where I was going and going home. Yeah. But there was these moments almost every day that I would walk home from school by myself before I met my sister, and I would run my hand against the chain link fence. And in those moments, it was like I was connecting to something much bigger. Like call it the universe or the cosmos or God or whatever we would call it, but it felt outside of, but also inside of me. And I just felt connected to everything. It was almost like there was a hum there. And so I remember going home and I would ask my sister, do you ever have moments where you feel like you're connected to everything? And she would be like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. And so I think early on, I began to think that experience, although was so amazing and I wanted to experience it every day, I also had this whole idea that the way other people saw that, the way I described it, it was like crazy. So I remember very early on not understanding because it felt so amazing and yet it was seen as like crazy. And so I just remember very early on going, wow, I'm not sure what this is. And I don't feel like it's crazy, whatever that means, like wrong. Mm-hmm. So what is it? But I also remember kind of tucking it away because it didn't seem acceptable. And then fast forward, I played sports, a lot of sports. And as an athlete, there would be moments where we would refer to it as like we hit the sweet spot, where there's synchronicity. We had done it enough times where I could pass without looking. It would go immediately right to the other player. There was this moment of synchronicity in basketball or even in volleyball where everything just felt like it just clicked into place. We were all connected, and it was a very similar feeling as running my hands along the chain link fence. And I was like, oh, that's this thing.
But in the sports, maybe it felt more acceptable?
For sure. Because when I would ask them, they would say, yeah, we're connected, or there's synchronicity, or you already know I'm going to be there. So what we referred to it as was the sweet spot. There was that sweet spot where everything just clicked. And so I began to realize, oh, that feeling or that experience, and it was very physical, like a sensation of that, I began to refer to as, oh, well, that's called the sweet spot. Like when you hit the sweet spot. Skiing is another example. When I would ski when I would be young, and I began to learn going down, and at first you're like, or driving or any of those kinds of things where there's so much to learn, and then it all kind of comes together and you're just doing it without thinking about it. And you find some sort of like rhythm, or everything feels connected. It all comes together. It's like the sweet spot. You hit the sweet spot.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now, in that first story, I think it reminds me also of how sometimes feeling the oneness can ultimately make you feel separate. Like if I am connected to something bigger and I feel one with everything, how the social conditioning has taught us that that's the weird thing, not the separateness.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I refer to a lot. Like if there's a big piece about me that I learned through my journey, like you asked, it would be I began to realize fairly early on that what was normal didn't feel like my nature. Like there was some difference there. That what was normal or others thought was normal or conditioned didn't feel like it was natural or my nature. And then I went on a journey of trying to figure out
natural. And also, did you feel weird?
Well, not natural. It didn't feel weird inside of me. It felt weird when I shared it outside of me.
Like outcasty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like other people saw it as wrong, weird, different, not okay, and pretty strong message that's not acceptable. Don't talk about that.
Would you say that that kind of is still present, maybe not in you, but do you think that throughout your journey, it has been something you've had to keep alive in you? Like, I wonder once you realize it, like, oh, I actually feel connected to everything, right? And that's something that's not familiar to most people. That's what I'm noticing. How do I protect that innocence or connection or spiritual? Like, how do I keep myself believing that it's okay?
Yeah. Well, as I got older into my journey, I began to realize, oh, I'm not the only one. I would have conversations, or I would be in groups with people, or I would share things. And that was always the key, the willingness to keep sharing it, keep talking about like what was inside and sharing it, even though risky and scary. Like if I kept sharing it, then it gave other people opportunity to like meet me there or not, think I'm weird or not. So I was willing to be weird to find people who maybe had similar experiences.
Did you enjoy the weirdness?
Yeah.
Because I know I pushed the weirdness.
Yeah.
Like it's never been hard for me to push that sort of social pushback.
Yeah. Mine was more wild though. Like, I don't know that weird was necessarily it because I was a good girl. I fit in. I did what I was supposed to in my journey, but it was wild. And another place where I experienced it was with animals. So I grew up with horses and riding horses. When I would get on the back of a horse and we would go out and ride in the fields, I would have a very similar experience with another being, like a horse, like an animal. I would have a very similar experience. Wind through my hair, running through the field, and it felt like we all were just one, a part of something bigger, powerful, amazing. And it was the feeling inside, both kind of the sensation in my body, but also like emotionally in my heart or whatever you would want to call that, felt like ecstatic, wild.
So for you,
free.
It was always very embodied.
Yeah, always.
For me, it was always very idea-based.
Yeah.
The embodiment came way after, and it was a lot after meeting you. But for me, it was more like the big ideas.
Yeah, mine was more experience it and then find the big ideas that allowed or spoke about or provided an understanding and kind of words or explanation to the experience. So I had the experience and then I found the explanation. And most of the explanation that described what I was experiencing was in more spiritual context or spiritual texts or something of kind of a grander, more transcendent, more beyond just the human experience. Now, I could find it with other humans, right? And I could certainly experience it. We could talk about it, but it was rare. But through my journey, I began to, like you asked how to keep it alive, I began to surround myself with people who had at least their own version or similar experiences that we could talk about it. Like, it may not be exactly the same, but there was enough similarity. And then I began to create friendships and groups and places where I hung out and began to explore books or teachers or leaders or workshops or things, schools that was a part of the curriculum or that was a part of the teaching, was this idea that we were a part of something far greater than just ourselves.
Yeah, I think I'm listening to you and I'm like trying to, because I obviously also, my story, and I've also felt kind of different, especially in the processing of it. Not so much the processing of life, not so much that I feel so different, but for me, I was always challenging the ideas. So for me, it was more about the question, living in the question. And I was always challenging the fact that I don't believe in rules. I've always had a struggle with rules.
Was that your questioning? Like in your journey?
Like why? Always. Like why?
Why?
Just because.
Why do we do that? Why is it that way?
Because I'm your, like, that's sort of like, because you're my mom. Like, what does that mean?
That does not explain why.
That does not explain why.
That is not a good answer.
Exactly. So I got a lot of those, a lot.
Or because I said so?
Or because I said so, or that's your teacher, so just respect with her, blah, blah, blah. And for me, it was never good enough. So it always started with the question, and then I created some sort of experience, which was usually very pushbacky. Like,
Can you give me an example?
I don't have an experience of me being a rebel, but
other people did.
Yes, everyone did. But I don't remember me like throwing tantrums or like I don't remember me being like, no. I was just always very matter of fact. Like, that's just not going to happen.
Did you know what rules to break and what rules not to break? Did you have a sense of that?
I knew I didn't have enough explanation in the answers for me to trust that was the only way. I always felt like answers were too short and that I needed more of a reason, which is probably why I love purpose, because
or the why.
I'm like, what are you talking about? That's how life goes. And every time where I feel I challenged something definitely has to do with, I know there's another way. And just the fact that I want to figure out another way seemed like rebellious, right? But I knew that there could not be just one answer to anything.
Or be blindly led by one direction or answer.
But I remember my beingness just very matter of fact. Like, I'm just not going to do that. Like, that's not who I am. Not like, wah!
Well, it's interesting that you say that because when you say matter of fact, it feels like it closes in and limits.
Yeah,
like it's very matter of fact.
It's all living in the question.
It's very specific. It's very much that. And I go, yeah. And those were the places or conversations or times where I felt like the conditioning was more important than my experience.
My whole war with my mother growing up was, you're not really seeing me. Like I'm always, I'm like,
did you have a black sheep, that concept of
black
kind of
sheep,
outside of it, not the same, not my family, maybe I don't belong here.
And also just like, you're not even taking the time to figure out who I am. Like you don't actually want to know who I am. This is just, I'm not the girl you want me to be. I get that. But do you care to know who I am? So that when I felt the no acceptance, I really now see that my mom was just trying to follow a playbook, and I get it. Like a good girl should blah, and if not, I'm being a bad mom.
Exactly.
I get that, but the experience as her daughter was, you really aren't even taking the time to figure out who I am.
Yeah, I definitely had that experience. Now, part of it for me, though, is because when my parents got divorced, I was 11. So I'm in the midst of kind of this whole thing. And then I left with my dad, which was very unheard of back then. And he was a single parent. And so the way that my dad dealt with it, because I saw things differently, I questioned things. I didn't understand why things were the way they were. I would share some of the things that I was experiencing. And my dad basically said, I think you need help or support I can't give you. So I could hear that he wanted me to be supported, but he didn't have the support I needed. And the only way he knew how to provide support was through kind of the psychiatric model, right? So go with the mental health track. So
which is also more than a lot of some parents won't even go there.
Correct. So I did feel supported enough in that my dad was trying to figure it out.
So, yeah.
But him trying to figure it out and then having me go through the mental health place kind of reinforced this idea of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's a threat. That was the message I got. It's a threat. It's a threat to the family structure. It's right. Could you fix this? Because it's super uncomfortable. If we talk about the theme of your podcast, right? This year, the series, right? Is the journey, right? And
the discomfort.
Of the discomfort.
Yeah.
And not only my own, I began to wonder, I started to feel uncomfortable about what was going on inside of me. And it wasn't until years and years and years and years later that I was like, oh, this is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to actually change this.
Mm-hmm.
This is a really good thing. In fact, this uniqueness has informed and inspired and been the wisdom that I have walked with and developed that has supported other people in them embracing their own wildness or embracing their own not fitting in or not really understanding or being accepted and how to reconcile that and kind of find their own path and find their own way.
Do you think that those realizations, because I also relate to that realization of, oh, okay, this is actually okay. And not just okay, it's actually my superpower.
Really good. Yeah.
But do you think those realizations are soul driven? Our journey is supposed to figure it out? Because I know a lot of people live with those gifts and don't necessarily feel that they're allowed to use them.
So great. I don't know how I would define it. I think there's many names to call it. The thing I use the most is, how alive does it feel? Does it feel alive? Do I feel alive in it? So you could call it, is it a soul recognition? Is it my spirit? Is it love? Is it God? Is it whatever you might call that? Whatever name you might put on that. But one of the ways, I have my own version of that, but one of the ways that I talk about it is, when you are experiencing it and you're kind of embracing that part of you, does it feel alive in you?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel kind of alive and illuminated or lit up or excited? And it feels like more of I'm filling out my own skin is a way that I talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
And so people can relate to that. it's kind of like a balloon that's deflated and all of a sudden it's being filled up and now it's the fuller expression of balloon.
Was it also like your environment? Did that support or did that construct the possibility? Because I also feel our environment can nourish or not directly affect, but at the end of the day, if our environment is more, I just think of myself, like when I finally became who I was here to be, I left home, right? So now I see my soul needed that, or that moment needed that. It's been a long journey and now I can be home and everything's fine. But in that moment, and I don't mean home like just my house. I feel like that whole city, like the whole, so morally based and so judgmental. And when I left that city as a whole,
okay.
So the whole city was I moved to New York and that was like, nobody cares who I am here. Like I can actually be who I was meant to be. Nobody gives a shit. And I came from a background where everything matters. Like your parents matter, your last name matters, your money matters, your blah, blah, blah.
Well, we've talked about that, right? Identity, image. Like we're not talking about it necessarily on this one, but like these are things that we've talked about, right? And having to live up to that.
But I think I was able to connect to that power that when you're talking about when that noise wasn't around me. When I was like literally on my own, like this is a blank slate. I can do anything I want with my life. And that inner voice became louder than the social voice.
Yeah, I think it's great because being here is a great example for me about environment, right? So to be anywhere where you don't speak the language, I think that's why travel is so valuable, to move into a different environment where all you really have to know yourself is inside of you, right? And then to be in an environment that is enough different that I think it's conducive to and supportive of you being more of who you are. But I also think environment, like those new environments, can reinforce some of the fears or concerns. So when you ask about environment, I think it's super valuable and important. And I think environment can be a great opportunity to live into it. I also think it can also reinforce some of the fears or concerns because it can get really uncomfortable. And it's one of the things I was listening as you were talking, I thought, one of the things that I think is so important too is that the idea that if I'm leaving something, if I'm running away from or moving away from something in order to be who I am, versus moving toward something that feels more aligned with or resonant or real or like who I am.
And I think I had a combination when I moved to college. But at the end of the day, I think that the universe brought me back because when you do leave running away from something, I think life will be like, you need to heal, some more.
You need to go back because there's a lot of those things that you actually love that are a part of you. Not all of them. But let's not throw them all out. In an effort to become who I am, right? So, I think environment definitely plays a part. And I think what we always attempt to do too is find the answer when really what's most valuable is to live in that question and continue to, if it's a journey, how often am I looking for the destination in the journey? Like I want the answer. I want to know, have I arrived yet? Did I get there? Did I do this right? Like even in our conversation, there's going to be times here you're going to ask me a question and I'm going to respond with like, I don't know. It's the journey. It's the unfolding. I don't really have an answer. All I could give you is here are some things that I learned along the way. Here are a few pieces for me.
And also that have worked for me. That have worked
or with
personally.
And I could say because I lived in the laboratory of human beings for the time that I did and studied people, I can say here are some themes I noticed. Here are some common themes that I noticed around human beings. But if we're talking about just my own journey, I think I definitely left running from a lot of those things, thinking I would find the answers somewhere else. And I was still looking for them outside of myself. And I think there are some things we pick up along the way, but ultimately I realized, oh man, everywhere you go, there you are. And that's the one I need to be most comfortable with, confident in, listening to, trusting is like the journey within myself.
So I know that part of what you have taught me, I do recognize that my first response as a human being is mental. Like that is always like my first response, like the idea, the whatever. And part of what I've learned with you, first through body and then connecting it to spirituality, has been how to keep my ideas alive in a different way and like also work through my ideas, my mental capacity, because I do honor it and I think it's beautiful, but I do also know that if I just connect mentally, that's when I burn out. That's when I'm doing things just to do them or to create like the superficial feedback.
Yeah, it's also just one of the multifacetedness of who you are. So if we're just looking at one facet, and that's just one way that the light's reflected or life is reflected, like, and we're denying or not even paying attention to all these other these other additional facets, like you're not going to have the whole experience.
Don't you think we live in a world that's really
highly mental?
Highly mental. Yes. Highly mental.
Mental comprehension, understanding, ideation. Like we value good idea over good application.
And I listened to this, I don't know if it was a podcast or a meditation. I don't know where I heard this, but you know, how much we value assertiveness and how much assertiveness sometimes is not what we should be valuing. We should be valuing presence and like even doubting, you know, but how there's leaders that maybe are steering you in the wrong way, but because their energy is assertive, you will follow them versus maybe leaders that will look at options and not
be more curious or explore different perspectives.
Exactly. So when did the power of body become important to you? Because I'm pretty sure it wasn't because you're a coach.
No. Really early on. Like as an athlete, that's where it became the most important. And it was more of an access point for me. So the body was the access point for the rest of kind of who I am and how things work. And so I remember the first time I was coached as an athlete and this was young, like I was young. If you can't get your body to do what you want it to do, then it's more of a mind thing. And so how do you get the mind and the body to talk to each other?
Oh my God. I just had that experience skiing.
Yeah.
Like there was a point where I was like frozen and Adrian's like trying to move me, but it was literally like visual. It was my mind. It was so white and huge.
Yeah.
It wasn't really steep.
Yeah.
It was just my mind.
The vastness of all of that.
I was like,
that's so
frozen.
fantastic.
It was interesting because I was
not like temperature frozen.
No.
Okay.
Like my mind literally froze my body.
Yep.
Everything logically told me this is
unsafe.
Safe. No. This is safe because I could see it wasn't steep,
right?
But it was just so vast. I got like just frozen. I couldn't see any buildings. It was just white mountain.
Yeah.
And I think I didn't feel unsafe. I just felt like I didn't have the capacity. It was more that like, I don't think I know enough about skiing to do this.
I think it's very disorienting.
Yes.
Like I can't orient in the way that I typically do. And so then if I'm looking to things to orient to, like where am I in space? How am I? Where am I supposed to look? How do I know if I'm inbounds or out of bounds or those kinds of things? I think it can be visually very disorienting. And then the whole body, we all just go, no.
But that literally what I did, well, Adrian coached me, but he was just like, remember, just in Spanish, but
put your skis down.
Put your skis down and then just go,
put your skis down the hill.
So he got me out of it through my body, like not my mind. Like remember the steps.
Yeah. That's so good. That's a great example. But for me, it was in basketball, standing at the free throw line. And they kept talking about muscle memory. And I couldn't, and they said, practice. And I was practicing, but I wasn't practicing believing that I could make it. I was practicing And in my practice, I began to disbelieve. I missed it enough that even if it was just 5 in a row that I missed, just 5 in a row, not making it, because already I kind of had this perfectionistic kind of thing starting to show up that if I couldn't get it right and I was wrong 5 times in a row, I began to believe I couldn't make it. And so basically my mind's telling my body, every time I would miss the shot, oh, I can't do this. I don't know how to do this. And it wasn't true. I knew how to, but my mind and my body just weren't communicating. And so that was the very first time that it was introduced that my mind and my body actually talked to each other. And I remember being so frustrated, and I stormed out of the gym going, my mind and my body don't talk to each other. They're in a fight. My coach is like, yeah. And we need them to make up so that they can work together.
And did you always have the spiritual aspect of body integrated, or that was also later on?
I mean, yes, but like I said, it took a while for me to kind of put it all together. Yes, it was there, but they all kind of felt separate from each other. I didn't realize they all coexisted. I didn't realize it all came together. Hence the reason way down the road in my journey, wholeness and holistic became a super important part of who I am and what I value and what's important to me, because I thought they were all just kind of these separate components that you had to kind of work on. And then at some point, maybe they would kind of work together. But they didn't click in until much later.
And how do you relate just body and spirituality? Like if we get the mind out of it, for you, I know one of my favorite topics is time. I love training time and just like thinking about time in many different ways. So one of the biggest pieces for me is the body is now, right? So whatever the body is doing now, representing now, somatically, everything, right? Your body is speaking. And if you can create this relationship in the present moment with body, like to me, that's a spiritual relationship with it.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I definitely align with that. I mean, it's probably why we like chatting and hanging out and having these kinds of conversations. I would describe it, the way that I describe it is, and this didn't come, I wasn't able to explain this until later on in my life, but I do remember the first time I ever was even introduced to the notion that if I can feel the sensation in my body, like my butt sitting in the chair right now, or my breath moving in and out of my nose, that if I bring my awareness to that I'm literally tending to life. Like I'm experiencing life move through me. So if I can bring my awareness to my breath and the sensation of that, or feel my butt in the chair, I'm moment here. I bring my awareness to that sensation, I arrive in this moment. But also to tend to sensation is to tend to the experience of life moving through me.
Totally.
And I think that is one of the most profound awarenesses that, and then there's the whole piece of like where my feet are is where I am. I'm not 8 years old. I'm not 80 years old. I'm not the historical part because we spend so much time rehashing history. Shoulda, coulda, woulda, rehashing it, or rehearsing for like what's coming and preparing and hoping and wishing that rarely are we right here. That when I can do that, everything's available. Now I subscribe to that. Like I have come to believe that everything is available right here, right now. And there's ease in that. Like any spiritual connection, aliveness, healing, new possibility,
creative possibility,
anything is available right here, right now. But that is a very different approach or interpretation of life than a lot of people have. But for me, it doesn't make it any less true. I really do believe. Like right now, I do believe that all and everything is occurring. So this conversation is creating and generating aliveness in me, aliveness in you. I trust that everyone that's in the studio right now at some level is having their own experience of this. And in that experience, we're connected. And then it's going to send out to whoever it's going to send out to. And that's already happening. And then creating connection. And then I'm right back to the 10-year-old running her hands on the chain link fence, talking into a microphone, which I'm not all that excited about with a camera on me. But if I can let go of the looking good or what it's going to sound like or look like, or, my chins or my this or my that. And I can just open to why we're doing this. Who cares? Because
it's not about
as crazy and as simple as it sounds, it's all love and it's life.
Totally. I'm thinking about my monologue, and I'm thinking about, as you were talking about the basketball, I can relate to that so much because I think I've been frozen when I rehearse because my mind is overriding like the beauty of what you're saying. Like at the end of the day, every rehearsal can be service. Every rehearsal can be just like an offering, and I'm not living it like that. I've been living it. I've been living it more like, like that nervous disconnect, body, mind, spirit. So
and like how many times creative endeavors are completely stopped and never fulfilled, never experienced, never offered because we listened to those fears or conversations or whatever we want to call those limiting beliefs or conversations inside of us.
So would you say the mind then, if we put it into a spiritual context, this is my belief, but I don't know what you think, but I think our mind is here to serve our journey, like our soul's journey. So the trick or I don't know if it's a trick, but is to be present to the information. The practice. No trick.
Maybe trick, but I would say practice.
The practice would be to listen to it, have a knowing that it's not the only truth. Listen to what it's saying because it's informing what you're here to work on.
I just look at it as like the brain, the mind together. They work together, right? We are processing and inundated by information. Like there's a ton of information coming into us right now. And our brain's designed to organize that information as quickly as it possibly can and determine threat, not threat. Like organize the information to know, maintain status quo. Are we good or are we not?
Survive it.
And then because we spend all this time coming up with all these kinds of ideas.
Yeah. Existential questions.
All these things where we start to worry about and get all freaked out about and go, but what if? But what if she or he or they or Like to me, we have the privilege of time to spend just kind of
living in the question.
And sometimes those questions can be very forwarding and supportive. And sometimes those questions can be very much limiting and reinforcing. The brain's primary thing is to maintain status quo and keep us safe and alive. But if you want to do something more than just be alive, if you want to go live a full, exciting, adventurous new life, then we've got to override kind of our design, which I think is kind of fun to play with.
Yeah, and
not wrong.
And at the same time, a lot of people that go into personal work do want it to have an end result.
Of course.
So what would you say to that? What would be your take on that, or your offering on that?
Well, I think just by the nature of this the way we're conditioned, the good news about that is we do like to create results. We are conditioned to create results. I bet if I lined up 10 people right now, they could tell me at least 4 or 5 things they've been conditioned to create in their life before they die.
Yeah.
And they would probably be pretty similar.
Yeah.
Like, what would you say? I bet we could write them down, and
for
you and
sure.
I would have very similar lists about if we just go back to the conditioning. You're born, you grow
married,
up,
you have money, otherwise you're nobody.
Right.
Yeah.
All the things.
Yeah, all the things.
So I think it's valuable, and there are various things that we want to create results. I guess the way I look at it is the relationship with the results is, so we create a result. We come to the end of that venture or that journey, a part of the journey or that chapter or whatever it is, and we feel really good about that. And it has a beginning, a middle, and an end, but the journey continues. Like, those are chapters, and our life is a book. And so how do we continue the story? That chapter part ends, we create an end result. If you're talking about an end result of the book of life, okay. What do you want to create before you go? Yeah. Is that what you mean?
And
like an end result that you want to create before you die?
Yeah. And also, there's so much that's biological
what would you say?
Also. What would I say? What
do you want to create before you die? Like, as an end result?
As an end result?
Yeah. If you were to just say,
I'm going to be really cheesy about it.
One thing.
Yeah.
I want to ask the rest of the guys in the studio.
But
also.
Like one result. One result.
I want to put everybody on the spot right now.
I'm going to be cheesy and cliche, but it's the only one that when I heard it, I was like, oh. And that's probably really why I do what I do, which is I heard Maya Angelou with Oprah, and you know I love Oprah. She was like my first spiritual awakening.
I do know that. Yeah.
So I believe a lot of what she says. No, but this was Maya Angelou. And
I love that you own that shamelessly. I love that you go, Oprah was my first spiritual awakening.
It was.
And I celebrate that with you.
Yes, I was 17.
Any mechanism will do.
Yes. She was the first person. Obviously, she's Oprah, so I don't need to explain a lot. But I remember, obviously, that she was like, I am Christian, but I'm also opening to this other way of looking at it. So I love that. I love that she was always very true to how she saw God, and then how she opened to this new way of seeing God.
And she could have conversations with Maya Angelou.
Exactly.
Could actually have people like that come on.
And I'm going to tell you, sometimes I listen to her and I there's still humanness in her that I'm like, that is very victim-y, Oprah. You know, but you know, sometimes,
Thank God.
Yeah.
I'm so glad she's human.
Yeah.
Anyway, what did you hear Maya say?
That
resonated with you.
Your legacy is the amount of people you touched in your life. And I truly believe that I wasn't here to be a mom, for example, which is an end result I was told I should have, but that my mothering was different. My mother energy in the world was different. And I truly believe that even if it's speaking, I'm touching someone's life, and that is my ultimate legacy. It's not like a tangible like house, right? Or how much I traveled or how much whatever. Like, it made me think of legacy in another way also, like when you're gone, what actually stays here? And that has to do with like other people, right? Because even a house or whatever, that is, I don't know, it's different. So anyway, that is my end result. What about you?
I've rewritten it so many times, but I think in general, just to keep me kind of current and alive in it, but I think that's the key is that I continue to touch lives and have people feel ever more alive and also to feel seen. It's important for me that people feel seen. Like, that's why I'm like, I would love to put the rest of the two guys in the studio on the spot here, because I want to see them. Or I want your audience to see them, even though they're behind the scenes. That's important to me, that people are seen. And I don't mean just like physically seen. I mean like, I see you. It's why I love curiosity and asking questions and being with people in that way, is because I want to see more than just what you show the world. Because I really do believe that some of the greatest facets of people are oftentimes the things we don't show very many people.
Which is another piece of social conditioning, right? Like, we value what's seen, like what's in your face.
Do.
And we don't
and
value.
what we keep putting in front of us, thinking, magazines, movies, television, books, this, right? It's also why I'm so glad that we're not just going through a step-by-step question, answer, interview process, but having a conversation. And neither one of us really knowing exactly where it's going to go feels more alive to me.
Because we have to be present, which would be nice in our relationships, right? No,
and to listen to you.
Yeah.
Because you could go anywhere.
Yeah,
I know you well enough to know you could go anywhere.
Yeah.
And for me to just be with you and listen.
I love that. I know you. You could literally go anywhere.
You could go anywhere. But do you know, like, I could too. I could go with you anywhere.
Yeah.
And I love that dance. And I want to, it's important to me that by the end of this conversation and during this conversation, that we all feel more connected to aliveness.
What would you say, we can end with this. What would you say if we're going to connect mind, body, and spirit would be the way of being that connects it to you or for you? For you.
Say it again.
What is the way of being?
I'm picking one.
Yes. That connects mind, body, and spirit.
Grace.
Grace. Why?
Because the word means multiple things. It means being graced, meaning allowing forgiveness and opportunity and learning and growing in something where we make mistakes. And so that feeling allows me to connect all of those things together, is that when I feel like I'm in the presence of grace by God or my partner or my friends, I feel like I'm allowed to make mistakes and learn. And therefore align ever more so my mind, body, heart, spirit. Grace, because in movement, to walk in and to move in grace, there is a particular way of movement and quality of movement that I love, which is for me to feel present and alive in the movement, and that there seems to be a sense of honor or elegance and aliveness and light in the movement in that way. And I just love the word. It's not an onomatopoeia, but it should be, because I think it actually sounds like what it is. So, gracias.
Gracias?
Gracias.
Yeah. But I always have this challenge because I think words sound so much better in English. Gracias.
Not all of them.
Some of
them. A lot of them do. Like phrases in Spanish that capture the essence, and English is just like, bah.
I don't know.
It's good.
I mean, we
can have this. We can have this ongoing battle back and forth for the rest of our lives. I think grace is the way of being.
I love it.
What about
think
you?
For me is joy. And the only thing I can think of that is because it's just like so simple. And I think that when mind isn't in your way, when body isn't in your way, when your being right isn't in your way, it's just like a joyful, and then joy vibrates and
There's
joy.
A frequency.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
that's what What's the frequency? Can you describe it? Like in your body, what's the sensation? I want to talk about the sensation.
When I dance and when I'm just free, it's free.
And what's the sensation?
It's a lot of energy, like just very...
Like vibration?
Energetic. I want to do everything and just like...
Like champagne bubbles in your blood?
Yes. Champagne bubbles in my blood. See? I've always told them that when you were coaching me, she has like the most extensive vocabulary. It's annoying. Because then I'd be like...
I'm so glad. I'm so glad I could annoy you. That is my mission. That's my legacy with you.
I'd be like, how am I going to follow that? Because your language is just so extensive. And I'd be like, now I know, because you also trained me too. This is who you are. And you're awesome being who you are. But I always feel like I need a dictionary. What is that? And what is what does that mean?
Well, good, because I keep going, escucha, respira, profundo, papata. ¿Cómo se dice? ¿Cómo se dice? ¿Cómo se dice? I'm glad I know that term.
Yeah, well, we can do a whole other episode about language, but thank you, Krista. This was a beautiful first
Are we done?
We're done. We're the first one.
Thank you so
doing more.
much. No, really. Thank you. You're the best.
Gracias, comunidad linda, por estar aquí. Si crees que este episodio puede despertar, apoyar, inspirar, sostener a alguien de tu vida, no dudes en enviarlo. Te invito también a suscribirte al canal y a tocar la campanita para que te avisemos cuando haya un episodio nuevo. Gracias, linda comunidad. Y tengo un canal nuevo para ti. El canal de meditaciones está disponible en Spotify, Meditaciones by Marta Ro. Hay meditaciones para intencionar tu día, para que empieces con todo, de distintas temáticas, para empoderarte, para centrarte, para darte paciencia. Ve y búscalo y arranquemos tus mañanas juntos. Te amo. Adiós.